The morning began like any other in Ouagadougou. The city moved with its usual rhythm. Vendors opened their stalls. Soldiers patrolled, and ordinary people went about their day. But for Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the revolutionary leader of Burkina Faso, that day would mark a dark and personal chapter in his life, one that would shake not just him, but the entire African continent. News came in whispers at first, an emergency communication from his most trusted inner circle. His son, a teenager, barely known to the public to protect him from the political threats that came with Traoré's defiance against Western dominance, had gone missing during a discreet trip to a neighboring country. Initially, it was believed to be a simple miscommunication or perhaps a technical issue with his security team. But within hours, all doubts were erased. Traoré's son had been taken. And not just taken, kidnapped. Evidence pointed to a high-level foreign operation, and all trails led back to one place, the United States. What followed was not only a test of leadership but a personal tragedy wrapped in political warfare. Captain Traoré had long been a thorn in the side of Western powers. His decision to pivot Burkina Faso away from French influence, to break ties with the West and form new alliances with Russia, China, and other non-Western nations, had drawn condemnation from Western media and governments. But nothing had prepared him for this, for the moment his own child would become a pawn in a global game of power and intimidation. Sources close to the Burkina presidency revealed that American intelligence operatives had been closely monitoring the young Traoré. They allegedly viewed him as a pressure point, a way to shake his father's resolve. The plan, according to leaked security memos, was to detain the boy under the pretense of international security cooperation, a vague term often used when states need plausible deniability, but this was not cooperation. This was coercion. The kidnapping unleashed a storm across Africa. In Mali, Niger, and Guinea, people flooded the streets in solidarity. They held signs that read, "Traoré is Africa," and "Hands off our future." For many across the Sahel and beyond, the abduction was not just about one man's son. It was about a continent under siege, a reminder that any leader who dares to resist Western control might pay with his own blood, or that of his family. In a rare and emotionally charged address to the nation, Traoré appeared not as the stoic soldier the world had come to know, but as a father, heartbroken, angry, and defiant. His words echoed with pain. Greater than, "They think by targeting my family, I will bow. They believe by threatening our children, they can break Africa's spine. But I tell you this, they have only lit a fire they can no longer contain." That address went viral across African social media, with hashtags like #FreeTRA or #EAcuteSon and #AfricanSons targets trending within hours. African youth, long skeptical of Western interference, now saw in Traoré a reflection of their own struggle, a father who was standing not just for his child, but for the children of a continent. Meanwhile, the United States government denied any involvement. A press statement from the U.S. State Department claimed no knowledge of such an operation and urged for calm and cooperation. But the people of Burkina Faso weren't buying it. Neither was Traoré. Confidential footage obtained by an African investigative network reportedly showed a black site detention center in Djibouti, a known hub for U.S. military and intelligence activities in Africa, where a young man matching the boy's description had been seen under surveillance. The African Union was forced to take a position, albeit a diplomatic one. It urged all parties to respect international law and protect the rights of children and families of public figures. Russia and Iran issued stronger statements, condemning what they called imperial tactics used by the West to destabilize sovereign African nations. Amidst the international pressure, African civil society didn't sit back. Activists in South Africa, Kenya, and Senegal held press conferences, marched, and petitions demanding justice. The African Bar Association threatened to bring the case before international human rights courts if the boy was not returned safely. In Nigeria, a group of legal scholars initiated a formal request for inquiry through the ECOWAS Court of Justice. Back in Burkina Faso, Traore ordered all Western NGOs with suspected intelligence ties to halt operations until further notice. He summoned foreign diplomats and gave them 48 hours to respond with clarity about the whereabouts of his son. His message was clear. Diplomacy would be pursued, but if it failed, Burkina Faso would act unilaterally. And then, after 7 days of silence, came a turning point. An anonymous international channel released a video, grainy but unmistakable, showing the boy, alive but clearly in distress, reading a statement that seemed scripted. He asked for his father to cooperate with the West and ensure Burkina Faso's alignment with global stability. It was psychological warfare. It was a father's nightmare. Traore's response stunned the world. Rather than capitulate, he doubled down. He called on BRICS nations to intervene, asking for international observers and forensic tracing of the boy's location. China, through back-channel diplomacy, reportedly used satellite imagery and digital intelligence to narrow down the area. Within 48 hours, a multinational coalition of African special forces, backed by discreet intelligence support, launched a high-risk rescue mission. The mission succeeded. The boy was returned to his father in a dramatic night, landing at Ouagadougou's military base. Though shaken and traumatized, he was safe. The nation erupted in celebration. People wept in the streets, drums beat across neighborhoods, and chants of Traore, Traore, echoed from the city to the countryside. But the story didn't end there. In the days that followed, Traore pushed for a continental summit on protecting African leaders from foreign intimidation. His words were firm, if they can come for my son, they can come for yours. This is no longer about politics. It is about sovereignty, about dignity, about the soul of Africa. The day Americans turned Captain Ibrahim Traoré's life into a drama by kidnapping his son will forever be remembered not just as an act of aggression, but as a moment when Africa stood up, not for one man, but for a principle, that no child, no leader, and no nation should be hostage to empire. This wasn't just a rescue, it was a declaration. A warning to those who still believe Africa is silent, weak, and divided. Because that day, they didn't just ignite a conflict. They awakened a continent. Just weeks after the emotional rescue of Captain Ibrahim Traoré's son, another event shocked Burkina Faso and reverberated across the African continent, one that many believe was a retaliatory move by foreign actors, frustrated by their failure to break Traoré's resolve. This time, the battlefield was not his family. It was his government itself. In the early hours of a seemingly normal Monday morning, the presidential palace experienced what was initially reported as a power failure. But this was no mere technical glitch. Communication systems went offline, security cameras were disabled, and a temporary blackout covered key government buildings. Within minutes, a small group of heavily armed, masked individuals attempted to breach the security perimeter of the State House. Traore was not there by coincidence. He had chosen to remain close to the palace following the recent threats, ignoring advice to relocate to a secure military command center. His instincts proved right. Asterisk, the attackers were no ordinary militants or rebels. Their tactics, uniforms, and silent coordination resembled special operations forces, trained professionals with foreign equipment and a clear objective: capture or eliminate Captain Traore. Asterisk. But what they didn't count on was the loyalty of Traore's elite guard, a unit personally vetted by him, made up of young soldiers from across Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. These were not just soldiers. They were ideological warriors, men who had sworn allegiance to the vision of a new Pan-African destiny, free of foreign domination. Gunfire broke out around 3:12 a.m. For nearly 40 minutes, intense fighting raged inside and around the perimeter of the compound. The attackers tried to flank from 3 directions, using night vision scopes and suppressed weapons. But the defenders, though outgunned, held the line. Reinforcements poured in from Ouagadougou's northern military barracks and snipers stationed on rooftops pushed the attackers into retreat. Asterisk, by sunrise, 6 of the invaders lay dead. 2 were captured, and it was what they revealed during interrogation that stunned the Burkina leadership. Asterisk, the captured men carried encrypted communication devices linked to frequencies used by a well-known Western private military contractor. Their accents were not West African, and their gear bore markings in English, French, and coded identifiers associated with international intelligence networks. What these men admitted under pressure left no room for doubt. They had been sent to destabilize and extract. Asterisk, within hours, Captain Traore declared a national emergency and ordered all airspace closed for 48 hours. He addressed the nation yet again, this time with fury, asterisk, greater than "they failed to break me through, my son. Now they come for my soul, our leadership, our revolution. Let it be known, Burkina Faso will not fall, not to mercenaries, not to empires, not to shadows in the night." Asterisk, that speech was broadcast across the Sahel, and once again, Africa rose. In Niger, President Abdourahmane Tiani sent a personal message of solidarity and placed his military on standby. Mali deployed drones to monitor the tri-border region. Guinea offered additional troops to reinforce key Burkina installations. It was becoming clearer by the day. This was no longer just about Burkina Faso. It was about all of Africa's new wave of sovereign-minded leaders standing together against covert aggression. Asterisk, Western governments issued predictable denials. They condemned the attack but refused to acknowledge the identities of the captured men. Their silence only fueled more speculation. International media tried to spin the incident as a suspected internal coup attempt, but the people of Africa weren't fooled. They knew what was happening. Asterisk, inside Burkina Faso, Traore initiated a full audit of all foreign personnel operating in the country, from aid workers to contractors. He expelled over 300 individuals within a week, citing involvement in or association with foreign subversion. He also ordered the creation of a new regional intelligence unit staffed jointly by Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger to combat future threats through joint surveillance, drone coordination, and digital tracking. Asterisk. But perhaps the most powerful moment came days later when Traore stood atop a tank in a public square in Ouagadougou, surrounded by thousands. He didn't wear his formal uniform. He wore a plain shirt and combat boots. Like any soldier, he spoke not as a president, but as a brother. Asterisk, we are at war, not a war of guns alone, but a war for our future, our children, our land, our right to be free from foreign rule. Let the world know, we are no longer afraid, and we are no longer alone. Asterisk, cheers erupted, flags waved. And from that square, a new chant echoed, one that would soon become the rallying cry of Africa's rising resistance. Traore today. Africa tomorrow. This failed coup wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a new phase in the continental struggle, one where shadows moved in secret, but the light of African unity burned brighter each day. Just as calm seemed to return. To Burkina Faso, another twist plunged the region into uncertainty again, but this time, the battlefield wasn't military or personal. It was economic. One crisp morning, Captain Ibrahim Traoré arrived at the Presidential Economic Council with an urgent intelligence file in hand. Its contents were explosive. A massive digital operation had been uncovered, an international effort to crash the Burkinabe currency, destabilize key trade routes, and trigger public unrest through inflation and scarcity. The culprits? A sophisticated network of foreign-controlled hedge funds, Western-aligned African banking executives, and covert economic strategists operating under the guise of development NGOs. The plan had been clever and brutal. It involved mass short-selling of regional currencies, coordinated cyberattacks on digital banking systems in West Africa, and a social media disinformation campaign aimed at convincing citizens that their money was no longer safe in national banks. Their goal was simple: weaken the economy so deeply that the people themselves would lose faith in Traoré's leadership, forcing him to either seek IMF bailouts or resign. The first signs had already emerged. In the capital, reports of frozen ATMs and digital wallet errors were becoming frequent. In rural markets, food prices began rising despite normal supply levels. Panic was spreading. Some citizens started withdrawing their savings, fearing a finance crash. But Traoré had seen enough manipulation in recent months to recognize economic sabotage when he saw it. He acted swiftly. He summoned the top banking officials and issued an emergency financial directive. All foreign-funded NGOs and private institutions with offshore ties were to undergo immediate audits. The Central Bank of Burkina Faso was placed under direct oversight by a newly created Sovereign Finance Task Force, a body of economists, data analysts, cybersecurity experts, and Pan-African financial historians. Their mission: expose the sabotage, counter it, and rebuild public trust. Within 72 hours, the task force uncovered startling evidence. One of the largest microfinance institutions operating in the Sahel had quietly rerouted millions of dollars to speculative offshore accounts. Several mobile banking apps, popular among the poor, were found to have hidden backdoors that allowed outside manipulation of exchange rates. Worse still, a major European investment group had shorted West African currencies, betting on their collapse. As news spread of these findings, mass protests erupted, not against Traoré but in support of him. People flooded the streets with empty wallets held in the air, shouting, "We are not your experiment, and Africa's currency is not for sale." Traoré then made a historic decision. He would begin the process of creating a Pan-African digital currency backed by natural resources, not debt, not the dollar, not the CFA franc. The currency, he declared, would be built by Africans for Africans and governed through a decentralized but regionally united platform. Mali, Niger, Guinea, and even Chad immediately expressed interest. Regional economists proposed backing the currency with gold, cobalt, lithium, and agricultural output, making it more resilient than any fiat system currently imposed by former colonizers. The West responded with outrage. Financial media outlets called the move reckless, populist, and dangerous. But across the African continent, a different term took root: revolutionary. China offered technical assistance. Russia proposed a resource backing agreement. Iran pledged secure blockchain infrastructure. For the first time in African financial history, the continent's leadership was rejecting dependency and designing a future rooted in economic sovereignty. But the attackers didn't stop. They launched digital assaults on the development servers of the new currency system. The Burkina Central Bank faced an attempted hack that nearly wiped its transactional logs. Luckily, Traore's newly recruited cybersecurity team, young, home-trained African programmers, had anticipated the breach. They had set up a decoy network, and the hackers walked straight into the trap. Their IP trails? Traced back to servers located in Virginia, Washington, D.C., and Geneva. With irrefutable proof in hand, Traore didn't just react, he went global. He called for an African Economic Sovereignty Summit, inviting leaders, thinkers, inventors, and entrepreneurs from every corner of the continent. Held in Ouagadougou, the summit was streamed worldwide. What was once a localized crisis had transformed into a movement. During his keynote speech, Captain Traore declared, "They colonized us through chains. They recolonized us through aid. Now they try to enslave us through currency. But we say today, Africa will mint its own future, and it will not be backed by fear." Thunderous applause followed. That moment marked the birth of a new financial awakening. African youth saw in Traore not just a soldier or president, but a visionary, someone who understood that true independence is not only about flags and borders, but also about money, data, and narrative control. To this day, economists call it the Traore financial resistance. The sabotage attempt had failed. The economy, though shaken, had survived. And more importantly, a new idea had taken root not just in Burkina Faso, but in Africa's heart. Less than 2 months after surviving an assassination attempt, a failed coup, and a full-scale economic attack, Captain Ibrahim Traoré was preparing for a rare diplomatic mission. It was an unprecedented move. The young Burkina leader, known for his anti-Western stance, announced that he would personally travel to Ethiopia to address the African Union General Assembly, not with a pre-approved speech or rehearsed statements, but with a raw, unfiltered message for the entire continent. But he would never arrive. As his military plane soared over the skies of Chad, en route to Addis Ababa, it abruptly vanished from radar. For over 45 minutes, air traffic control lost contact. Panic erupted. Burkina Faso's communications ministry immediately issued a national emergency broadcast. The president's aircraft is presumed missing. Search and rescue teams are being deployed. The world held its breath. Western outlets began speculating. Mechanical failure, pilot error, or even bad weather. But inside Burkina Faso, few believed any of that. The people remembered too well the recent attacks, the sons' kidnapping, the nighttime assassination attempt, the currency sabotage. No, this was no accident. This was sabotage at 30,000 feet. Meanwhile, the silence was deafening. No distress signal, no emergency beacon, nothing. But then, 6 hours later, the silence was broken by a rogue military transmission intercepted. In Niamey, Niger, the message was encrypted, but its contents were leaked within hours. Greater than target has been secured. Mission code Blackbird complete. Extraction confirmed. Holding point Alpha in progress. The shock turned to fury. Social media exploded with outrage. In the Sahel, people poured into the streets shouting, "Where is Traore?" In Mali, youth marched to the French embassy and lit candles. In Burkina Faso, Thousands camped outside the presidential palace. Some wept, others raised rifles. But everyone waited. Then came the twist that turned the world upside down. At exactly 2:14 a.m., a low-resolution video appeared on a Burkina military channel, clearly recorded in a rush, possibly under duress. It showed a dimly lit room. Sitting in the center, looking calm but bruised, was Captain Ibrahim Traoré. He looked directly into the camera. Greater than, "My brothers and sisters, I am alive. I am held by enemies of African unity, not foreign alone, but traitors among us. They offered me freedom if I surrender our dream. I refused." The feed cut. The shockwaves were instant. Not only was he alive, he had revealed what many feared. There were African collaborators involved in his abduction. But who were they, and where was he? Just 24 hours later, General Mamadou Souleymane, a high-ranking West African officer known for his ties to Western military training programs, declared himself the interim commander of stability in Burkina Faso. He claimed Traoré had voluntarily resigned to ensure peace and that a transition process was beginning. But no one believed him. Traoré's government, or what remained of it, refused the claim. His cabinet stood firm. His military loyalists rejected the so-called interim commander's authority. And most importantly, the people rose like never before. What followed became known as the 4-day resistance. Across Burkina Faso, citizens blocked roads, took control of local town halls, and refused to obey any orders from the coup faction. In every province, spontaneous militias formed, young men and women armed with sticks, stones, old rifles, and smartphones. They weren't just protesting, they were organizing. Farmers, truck drivers, teachers, and even monks took to the chimmas, streets to resist what they now called Africa's new slave catchers. Mali and Niger declared the so-called transition illegal. Guinea placed its border troops on red alert. The new Sahel alliance, born from anti-imperialist sentiment, issued a statement: "Any harm to President Traoré will be treated as a declaration of war against the sovereign nations of West Africa." But the real victory came not through bullets, but through hackers. An underground African cyber collective, mostly young tech minds from Kenya, Ghana, and Tunisia, began targeting the networks linked to the coup backers. They disrupted communications, leaked emails, and most critically, uncovered the exact GPS coordinates of the detention site, a private intelligence facility near the border of Cameroon and the Central African Republic, reportedly funded by a Western PMC. The information was passed to the Burkina loyalists. A special unit of elite forces, supported by Nigerian and Malian operatives, launched a stealth mission named Operation Black Horizon. At 3:47 a.m., a coordinated raid neutralized the facility. The world watched in disbelief when, hours later, live footage aired showing Captain Ibrahim Traoré, battered but defiant, walking free, flanked by African soldiers carrying both Burkina Band and Pan-African flags. He didn't need to speak. His presence was enough. His silence, more powerful than any speech. When he finally did speak later that day, standing in front of a crowd of 1 million gathered in Ouagadougou, he said, greater than, "They tried to silence me, but they made me louder. They tried to bury me, but I grew roots. They tried to take me, but they gave me back to my people. I am not the story, Africa is, and now we rise." That moment wasn't just about one man's survival. It was about a continent's awakening. Africa had watched the skies darken, but instead of folding, it fought back, with words, with unity, with resistance. The abduction of Captain Ibrahim Traoré was meant to end a movement. Instead, it transformed it into a legend still unfolding. Barely 3 weeks had passed since the daring rescue of Captain Ibrahim Traoré when whispers of yet another plot began to surface, not against his life, not against his government, but against his legacy. This time, the war came not with guns or currency, but with ink, microphones, and algorithms. It started subtly. A series of international news outlets began publishing suspiciously similar opinion pieces. Headlines like, "Is Traoré turning into a dictator?" "Burkina Faso's rising authoritarianism and Pan-Africanism or personal cult" began flooding African news feeds. Social media influencers, some with Western sponsorships, suddenly pivoted to criticizing the Burkina leader, warning that he was becoming the very thing he fought against. These weren't organic debates. They were coordinated. Data analysts from Burkina Faso's digital monitoring team uncovered that over 70% of the negative traffic originated from bot farms and foreign-based PR agencies, many linked to think tanks known for pushing regime change narratives across the global south. What Traoré and his team realized was chilling. A character assassination campaign had been launched, global, digital, psychological. If they couldn't eliminate him physically, they would discredit him morally. This new campaign had 4 goals. 1. Erode internal trust. Sow seeds of doubt among his closest allies and supporters. 2. Split the Pan-African movement. Paint Traoré as an egotist rather than a unifier. 3. Diminish his appeal to youth by portraying him as just another politician. 4. Rehabilitate Western influence by suggesting his resistance was making things worse. But Traoré wasn't naive. He had studied the fate of other revolutionary leaders, from Thomas Sankara to Patrice Lumumba. He knew the empire had many tools, and perception warfare was its most dangerous. Rather than respond with censorship or mass arrests, he did something bold. He invited the criticism, in a televised national address flanked not by generals, but by teachers, farmers, and university students. Traoré said, "They call me a dictator because I refuse to be a puppet. They call our unity dangerous because it threatens their monopoly. Let them speak. Let them write. But let us live and decide our truth with our own eyes." Then came an unexpected move. Traoré ordered the declassification of internal government sessions, opening up cabinet meetings, economic debates, and defense briefings to be streamed live for the public, with controlled redactions only for operational security. It was a transparency revolution. Across Africa, millions tuned in. They watched decision-making unfold in real time. They saw how policies were debated, how ministers were held accountable, and how Traoré himself was often challenged, not worshipped. The illusion of a strongman dictatorship shattered overnight. Still, the disinformation machine didn't stop. Fake audio clips of Traoré planning violent actions were leaked. Deepfake videos were circulated online. Western fact-checkers refused to comment, or worse, amplified the confusion by calling them plausible. It was digital chaos. Then came the breaking point. A prominent Western broadcaster aired a documentary titled Burkina Faso's Dangerous Messiah, painting Traoré as a manipulative populist exploiting Pan-Africanism for personal power. The documentary was promoted worldwide, translated into 12 languages, and shown in African universities through well-funded cultural outreach programs. But Traoré's supporters were ready. Within 48 hours, African filmmakers, journalists, and scholars responded with their own documentary. Voices of the ground. The people behind Traore. Asterisk, it was raw, unscripted, and deeply personal. Market women from Bobo Dioulasso spoke about price stability. Teenage boys in Niger described how Pan-African alliances gave them pride. Ex-child. Soldiers from Mali testified how, under Traore's leadership, they were given books instead of bullets. The counter-narrative exploded. For every lie, a truth was shown. For every smear, a face emerged. Not of Traore alone, but of a generation rising. Asterisk then, something extraordinary happened. A global digital referendum was organized by African civil society groups. They asked one simple question, asterisk greater than do you support the vision of Pan-African sovereignty represented by Ibrahim Traoré? Over 82 million people across 43 countries participated. The result? 92.7% said yes. That was more than a statistic. It was a warning shot to those behind the smear campaign. Africa was no longer sleeping. Asterisk Traoré's approval soared. But he issued a humble response. Asterisk, I am not your hero. I am your servant. If ever I fall short, do not defend me. Defend the vision. Defend the future. Asterisk in the end, the information war backfired. The attempt to assassinate Traoré's image had only strengthened his bond with the people. Not because he was perfect, but because he was real, transparent, and unshaken. The media campaign had failed, and in its ashes, a new African media network was born, owned by Africans, reporting in African languages, telling African truths. They called it Umoja, Swahili for unity. Asterisk, and once again, those who tried to silence him had only helped amplify his echo, from the deserts of Timbuktu to the ports of Dar es Salaam. Asterisk, because some voices, when attacked, do not fade, they thunder. The continent was still reverberating from the psychological war waged against Captain Ibrahim Traoré when a new front emerged, one that no one saw coming. Asterisk, this time it was spiritual. Asterisk, it began subtly in the remote northern provinces of Burkina Faso, where reports trickled in about strange visitors, foreign missionaries, mysterious NGOs, and self-proclaimed peacekeepers who were not there to deliver aid, but to preach division. These were not ordinary preachers or development workers. They arrived with high-tech equipment, private bodyguards, and encrypted communication tools. Their target? The belief system of the people. Asterisk, their strategy was chilling in its sophistication. Asterisk, they weren't just attempting to convert or influence. They were trying to fracture the social fabric that bound Burkina Faso's communities. The tactic? Weaponize religion and ethnicity to turn people against each other, and against their revolutionary leader. Asterisk, false sermons began circulating in makeshift mosques and churches. They warned locals that Captain Traoré was the Antichrist, that he had sold Burkina Faso's soul to pagan outsiders, that the Pan-African movement was a Trojan horse for foreign gods and anti-Islamic, anti-Christian ideologies. Asterisk, in one village, elders received fake prophetic messages claiming that an angelic vision had warned against supporting the government. In another, a Christian community was told Traoré would soon ban the Bible. In yet another, Muslims were shown AI-generated deepfake videos of Traoré allegedly disrespecting the Quran. None of it was true. All of it was designed to divide, confuse, and turn Burkina Faso into a battlefield not of bullets, but of beliefs. Asterisk, Traoré's intelligence network acted quickly. A special cultural affairs unit was dispatched to investigate. What they found shocked the administration. Asterisk, many of these spiritual agents had backgrounds not in theology, but in psychological operations. Some had served in military-backed religious projects in other destabilized countries. There, Funding traced back to ambiguous faith-based organizations headquartered in Europe and the U.S., many with indirect ties to private intelligence networks. It was clear. This was cultural subversion masquerading as spiritual aid. Traore called an emergency meeting with the Supreme Council of Imams, the National Church Council, and the Traditional Healers Guild. It was a historic gathering. Never before had all of Burkina Faso's spiritual streams come under one roof. Traore stood before them, not in military dress but in plain white, symbolizing unity. He spoke slowly, deliberately. Greater than they have tried bullets. They have tried bribes. They have tried lies. Now they come for our souls, not to save us, but to split us. Let it be known, we are many faiths, but we are one people. And no foreign doctrine will divide what history has united. The council responded with power. Muslim and Christian leaders issued joint declarations reaffirming their loyalty not to a man, but to truth, justice, and peace. Traditional leaders conducted public cleansing ceremonies to restore spiritual balance. Temples and mosques across the nation began holding interfaith unity services, a move that inspired Mali, Niger, and even Ghana to follow suit. Soon, people began referring to it as the reawakening. But Traore wasn't finished. To prevent further spiritual sabotage, he launched a revolutionary initiative, the Sahel Spiritual Sovereignty Charter, a document affirming the sacred independence of African faith from foreign political manipulation. It emphasized respect for all religions, condemned the weaponization of belief, and outlawed covert theological operations tied to geopolitical interests. The charter was signed not just by Burkina Faso's leaders, but by dozens of clerics and spiritual leaders from across Africa. It became the first African-led defense against religious neocolonialism, and then came the poetic twist. One of the captured foreign missionaries confessed during interrogation that their training had included specific modules on how to exploit tribal animism and religious ignorance to trigger instability. His name? Father Michael Roach, a former chaplain with known links to Western intelligence circles. His chilling words? Greater than your president is dangerous. He makes people believe they can think for themselves. That's when empire loses control. Traore responded not with vengeance, but with symbolism. He visited 3 villages that had been spiritually targeted. In each, he prayed publicly, once in a mosque, once in a church, and once at an ancestral shrine. At the last stop, he planted a tree and said, greater than, may this tree grow with the strength of our roots, the diversity of our branches, and the unity of our shade. The images went viral. In Ghana, Nigeria, Sudan, and South Africa, religious leaders began citing the Burkina example. A new slogan emerged, faith unites, fear divides, Africa decides. The attempt to fracture Burkina Faso's spirit had failed miserably. And in its place, a new kind of revolution was born, one not of weapons or politics, but of collective consciousness. Traore had faced the darkest kind of war, the war for the soul. And once again, he did not just survive. He transformed the battlefield. Into a sanctuary of strength. Not long after defeating the spiritual subversion campaign, Captain Ibrahim Traoré faced yet another sinister chapter in the relentless war against his leadership. This time, from the skies, it began with a series of strange sightings over Burkina Faso's northern skies. Farmers and cattle herders reported distant, high-altitude drones hovering silently at dusk. Hunters found small fragments of unfamiliar materials, scorched black chips and pieces of metallic shells in the bush. Even local Air Force radars picked up unexplained patterns. Craft that moved too fast, too quietly, and too precisely to be commercial or even traditional military drones. Then one night, it happened. A classified military storage facility near Kaya, housing advanced radar systems, donated by Mali and a stockpile of encrypted communications hardware, was reduced to rubble in under 30 seconds. No missile trails, no warning, just an eerie hum in the sky, followed by a series of silent, surgical flashes. By dawn, Traore's National Security Council had confirmed the worst. Burkina Faso was under attack from stealth drones, unlike anything they had seen before. The implications were terrifying. No declaration of war, no direct confrontation, just silent, high-tech warfare flying above sovereignty and raining down invisible control. Traore convened an emergency midnight war council in a fortified underground command bunker. Only a handful of his most trusted generals, cyber defense specialists, and Air Force commanders were present. The decision was unanimous. Burkina Faso would defend its skies with or without international permission. The first step, identification, working with technicians from Iran and Russia, countries well versed in tracking NATO drone activity. Burkina radar engineers reconstructed the signal echoes. The data showed high-altitude, unmanned aerial vehicles operating on frequencies used by Western military-industrial surveillance networks. Most damningly, the flight paths originated from a use-controlled base in Niger, recently abandoned on paper but still hosting advisors and contractors. The second step, message. Traore didn't issue a standard condemnation. He broadcast a message directly from a mobile military command truck standing beside an anti-aircraft battery and flanked by young cadets. His voice was calm, but cold. We warned the world. They ignored us. We protected our land. They mocked us. Now they send machines to do what their soldiers cannot. But hear this, even your metal birds will fall. Even your silence will be heard. The people responded not with panic, but with fury. Across West Africa, mass protests erupted at former French and American military posts. Activists in Mali and Niger blocked roads leading to foreign installations. In Ouagadougou, villagers carried branches, drums, and flags, gathering beneath the areas where drones had been spotted, declaring themselves human shields of sovereignty. The third step, counterstrike. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, through their Sahel military alliance, initiated Operation Skyground, a coordinated anti-drone effort using a mix of traditional anti-aircraft weapons, cyber jamming towers, and, most innovatively, a secret fleet of locally built interceptor drones, created by Burkina University students and military engineers. These weren't sleek or high budget. They were rugged, fast, coded on open-source platforms, and outfitted with jamming nodes and high-velocity projectiles. They called them Wenbirds, after the Mossi word for divine justice. Within week, 2 unidentified drones were downed over Ouagadougou. The wreckage revealed parts manufactured by a known U.S. defense contractor. Serial numbers were partially filed off, but enough remained to prove one truth: these weren't unknown actors. They were sanctioned machines of modern empire. Traore went to the O again, not to ask for permission, but to call out the silence. In a thunderous speech, he roared, "Where is your voice, Africa? They fly above our heads like gods, watching, judging, striking. What happens when it is your skies, your children, your crops? Are we waiting to be mourned before we rise?" That speech cracked the dam. Kenya, Algeria, Tanzania, and South Africa called for a continent-wide investigation into foreign aerial violations. Even typically quiet leaders began speaking about the new colonialism of the sky. And in response, something remarkable happened. A new coalition was born. Afriskinet, a continental satellite and drone defense coordination pact, with its headquarters in Burkina Faso, funded by public donations and BRICS technical support. It became Africa's first grassroots aerospace sovereignty alliance. Meanwhile, Traore continued strengthening his internal defenses. He created Sky Cadet academies where youth were trained in drone engineering, air surveillance, and cyber warfare. In one viral moment, he told a group of 12-year-olds, greater than, they send drones because they fear your minds. So let's turn our children into pilots, our students into engineers, and our silence into thunder. And then came the final blow to the attackers. A captured drone, intercepted mid-flight by a wen bird and crash-landed with minor damage, was reverse-engineered. Burkina technicians discovered a real-time data transmission system, live video feeds, audio, biometric sensors, and hacked it, for 1 hour. Every command center connected to that drone saw nothing but a live feed of Captain Traore, standing in the sun, eyes locked on the sky. Fist raised, it was not a weapon, it was a message. They had turned machines into tools of fear. He turned their machines into mirrors, to show them what resistance looks like. This wasn't just airspace defense. It was spiritual altitude reclaimed. And once again, those who believed Africa could be watched, controlled, or bombed into submission learned a lesson. This is not the Africa of silence. This is the Africa that sees, hears, and rises from the soil to the sky.